The rain hammered against the sleek hull of the orbit-to-ground transport as it descended toward the sprawling human military complex. Commander Yekka watched the planet's surface through the wide viewport, her golden reptilian eyes narrowing at the rugged terrain below. Terran military installations were not like the sterile training domes of her homeworld, Shikar. Here, jagged mountains pierced the horizon and endless forests stretched out like shadows beneath storm-laden skies. Lieutenant Jorran sat beside her, his scales a dull green that betrayed his unease. "Commander," he said, his voice tight, "our intelligence described human training as unorthodox, but I wasn't prepared for this." Yekka's forked tongue flicked out briefly, tasting the air even within the pressurized cabin. "Nor was I," she admitted. "Yet they thrive in conditions others would find intolerable. We will observe and report, nothing more." The transport landed with a sharp hiss of hydraulics. As the ramp lowered, they were greeted by a blast of cold wind carrying the tang of wet earth. Standing at the base of the ramp was Major Alec Drayton, his uniform soaked but his posture unshaken. He flashed a wide grin, utterly at odds with the storm raging around them. "Commander Yekka, Lieutenant Jorran," he barked over the wind, extending a hand. "Welcome to Camp Ironclad. We've been expecting you." Yekka hesitated, then clasped his hand, noting the rough calluses and the surprising strength behind his grip. Humans always exuded a strange blend of civility and primal energy. "Major Drayton," she said, inclining her head, "we appreciate the invitation. We look forward to learning from your methods." Drayton's grin widened, though his sharp eyes seemed to take in everything, her hesitation, the stiffness in Jorran's stance. "Oh, I promise, Commander, you'll see things here that'll stick with you." He turned on his heel, gesturing for them to follow. As they approached the training grounds, the sound of shouted orders and the rhythmic thud of boots against mud filled the air. Through the haze of rain, Yekka caught sight of young human recruits crawling under barbed wire, their faces streaked with dirt and grit. Others scaled towering walls, their muscles straining against gravity while instructors barked commands. Jorran froze, his jaw slack. "They're willingly enduring this?" Drayton glanced back. "Field drills builds teamwork, resilience, and adaptability, you'll see." Yekka's tongue flicked out again as she studied the humans. Their movements were ungraceful, their methods chaotic, and yet there was an undeniable purpose behind every action. She felt an odd unease creeping into her chest, though she couldn't place its source. "This," Drayton said, gesturing broadly, "is just the warm-up." Commander Yekka and Lieutenant Jorran followed Major Drayton along the edge of the training grounds, the squelch of mud underfoot a constant reminder of the human penchant for discomfort. The rain had not let up, reducing the field into a swamp-like morass. Young humans, clad in drenched uniforms, crawled on their bellies beneath barbed wire, their faces streaked with mud and rain. "Is this normal for them?" Jorran whispered, his greenish scales twitching nervously. Drayton overheard and let out a bark of laughter. "Normal? Commander, Lieutenant, this is what we call the mud crawl. It's not just about physical endurance, it's about breaking through mental barriers. Out here, they learn to keep moving no matter how miserable they get." Yekka's golden eyes scanned the recruits. Despite their bedraggled appearance, she noticed something unsettling. Many of them were grinning, laughing even, as though they took pride in every grimy inch they crawled forward. "Your people revel in this?" Drayton nodded. "It's not about enjoying the suffering, Commander. It's about finding strength in the struggle." The statement hung in the air as they continued to watch. One recruit slipped, his face slamming into the muck. Yekka winced instinctively, expecting him to retreat or cry out. Instead, the young human wiped the mud from his face with one hand, chuckled softly, and pressed forward with renewed determination. Jorran leaned closer to Yekka, his voice a low hiss. "If one of our cadets experienced that, it would be seen as a failure of discipline." "Perhaps," Yekka replied, her tone guarded. "Or perhaps our methods prevent this resilience." Drayton led them onward to a towering structure that loomed through the mist. Ropes, ladders, and walls spiraled into the air in a chaotic maze of obstacles. A group of recruits stood at its base, their soaked uniforms clinging to their frames. At a signal, they launched themselves at the structure, clambering up ropes and leaping between beams. This is the gauntlet, Drayton explained. A test of speed, strength, and problem-solving. Recruits have to think on their feet while pushing their bodies to the limit. Yekka tilted her head. And if they fail, they try again, Drayton said matter-of-factly. And again, and again. Failure's just another step toward success here. One recruit missed a handhold and fell, landing with a loud splash in a muddy trench. An instructor sprinted over, barking commands. The recruit nodded, scrambled to his feet, and attacked the course again, his movements more precise this time. Your methods are harsh, Yekka observed. You demand much from them. Drayton smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. Harsh, yes, but effective. We teach them that the world won't wait for their best days. They have to give everything, even when it's pouring rain and their muscles are screaming. Jorran's antennae twitched in agitation. Commander, this seems reckless. It seems human, Yekka murmured, her eyes fixed on the recruit now climbing past his previous point of failure. Despite the cold and exhaustion, his face shone with a mix of determination and triumph. Drayton glanced at them, his expression unreadable. This is just the physical stuff. Wait until you see how we train their minds. Yekka felt a strange heaviness in her chest. If this was the foundation of human military training, she could only imagine what lay ahead. The rain eased into a mist as Major Drayton led Commander Yekka and Lieutenant Jorran toward a large, unassuming building on the far side of the training grounds. The faint echo of explosions from the firing range punctuated the silence, a reminder that the human training never ceased. What lies ahead? Yekka asked, her tone neutral, but her mind cautious. Everything about this visit had unsettled her, and yet she felt compelled to understand more. Drayton stopped at the reinforced doors, the metal glistening with moisture. This, he said, his voice taking on a weightier tone, is where we push their minds to the edge. Physical strength means nothing without mental resilience. Inside, the air was cool and dry, a stark contrast to the harsh elements outside. Rows of sleek pods lined the walls, each softly illuminated by glowing blue lights. Cadets strapped into the pods appeared calm, their eyes closed, their faces tense with concentration. This is the neural testing chamber, Drayton explained. We put them through scenarios that simulate the chaos of battle. Not just the physical, but the mental strain. It's as real as it gets without spilling blood. Jorran tilted his head, his greenish scales flickering with curiosity. What kind of scenarios? Drayton gestured toward one of the active pods. A nearby monitor displayed the simulation, a battlefield teeming with chaos. Explosions erupted in rapid succession, soldiers shouted conflicting orders, and enemy forces closed in from all directions. The cadet in the pod flinched, sweat beading on his forehead, yet his hands moved with methodical precision on the control panel in front of him. This one's running a level 8 crisis simulation, Drayton said. Enemy forces have ambushed his unit, he's outnumbered, communications are scrambled, and supplies are running low. Every decision he makes impacts his survival and the survival of his team. Yekka watched in silence as the cadet barked orders into the simulation, his voice steady despite the chaos on screen. And if he fails? He doesn't fail, Drayton replied firmly. Not here, he learns. The commander folded her arms, her golden eyes narrowing. Your methods seem more like torment than training. Drayton's lips curved into a faint smile. That's the point. War doesn't care if you're comfortable. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. We prepare them for the worst, so when they face it, they're unshakable. Jorran's antennae twitched as he scribbled notes. But the psychological toll, surely this leaves scars. Scars, yes, Drayton admitted, his voice softening. But scars are proof they survived. Every cadet here will face moments in the field where everything falls apart. We make sure that when that moment comes, they don't. Yekka's gaze lingered on the cadet, whose breathing had steadied despite the unrelenting chaos of the simulation. The monitor flickered, signaling the end of the session. The pod hissed open and the young human stepped out, his face pale but resolute. He saluted Drayton, who clapped him on the shoulder. Well done, Drayton said. Your next run will be tougher. The cadet nodded without hesitation, moving to join a line of others awaiting their turn. Your people endure much, Yekka said quietly. Drayton met her gaze. We don't just endure, Commander. We adapt. That's the difference. For the first time, Yekka felt a flicker of doubt in her own convictions. The Kasari military prided itself on precision and efficiency, but she had never seen anything like this, a relentless pursuit of strength forged in chaos. "Come," Drayton said, gesturing toward another hallway. "This next part might surprise you." Yekka doubted anything could surprise her now, but as they followed, a gnawing question lingered in her mind. If this was how humans trained, what could possibly break them? The hallway opened into a vast forested enclosure, dimly lit by artificial lights mimicking twilight. The air carried a damp chill, and faint rustling noises emerged from the underbrush. Cadets moved among the trees, their uniforms blending into the shadows. Some carried rudimentary tools, while others crouched over makeshift shelters constructed from branches and vines. "This," Drayton said, spreading his arms wide, "is survival training." No technology, no comforts, just raw instinct and ingenuity. Commander Yekka's golden eyes scanned the area. "You abandon them in the wilderness with no tools?" Drayton smirked. "Not no tools. They get a knife, some rope, and their wits. Everything else they make or find." Lieutenant Jorran's scales bristled. "You force them to live like primitive beings? Surely this is unnecessary." "Unnecessary?" Drayton chuckled. "Commander Lieutenant, survival isn't about luxury. It's about knowing that when everything is stripped away, when the tools, the weapons, and the support systems fail, you still have what it takes to live. These cadets don't just learn to survive, they learn to thrive in the worst conditions." Yekka's tongue flicked out as she watched a cadet digging into the ground with his bare hands. Nearby, another worked to weave vines into a crude but functional shelter. The scene was raw, almost primal, and yet effective. "They seem unfazed," Yekka observed. "Even determined." Drayton nodded. "They are. Each cadet knows that these moments aren't just training. They're preparation. Out there in the field, there's no room for hesitation. Hunger, cold, exhaustion. They're just obstacles to overcome." Jorran pointed to a group huddled around a small fire pit. "They build fires as well?" "With whatever they can find," Drayton confirmed. "They adapt to their surroundings because the environment is the best teacher. Out here, they learn to problem solve in ways no simulation can replicate." One cadet struck flint against steel, his hand steady despite the chill in the air. Sparks flew, catching on a bundle of dry moss. Within moments, flames flickered to life, illuminating determined faces. The cadets' peers cheered softly, their voices carried on the cool breeze. Yekka tilted her head. "Your people seem to draw strength from each other." "Always," Drayton said. "We don't just teach survival here. We teach teamwork. No one gets through this alone." The words carried a weight that resonated with Yekka. Kesari warriors trained in isolation, relying on personal skill and advanced technology to overcome challenges. Watching the humans, she saw something fundamentally different. A reliance not just on self, but on those around them. "This is not what I expected," Yekka admitted, her voice quieter than usual. "Your methods are unconventional." Drayton's grin widened. "Unconventional works. The enemy won't fight fair, so neither do we. We train for every possibility, every disadvantage, because when the time comes, we'll be ready for anything." Jorran scribbled furiously in his notes, his antennae twitching with a mixture of fascination and unease. Yekka, however, found herself lost in thought. The Kasari doctrine valued order and precision above all else, but the humans had shown her a different kind of strength, a chaotic, unyielding resilience that defied logic. Drayton gestured toward a narrow trail leading deeper into the forest. "Ready for the next part?" Yekka exchanged a glance with Jorran, whose hesitation mirrored her own. But there was no turning back now. "Lead the way, Major." As they moved deeper into the forest, Yekka felt a strange tension building within her. If this was how humans prepared for war, what kind of warriors did they become when the real fight began? The trail twisted and turned, eventually leading to an open field encased by high steel fences. The air buzzed with tension as bursts of light and sound erupted across the space. Commander Yekka and Lieutenant Jorran stopped in their tracks, their senses overwhelmed by the cacophony. Young humans dashed through a series of obstacles, firing weapons at moving targets while smoke and simulated explosions filled the air. "What is this madness?" Jorran hissed, his greenish scales rippling with alarm. "This," Major Drayton said with a hint of pride, "is live fire training. Here, cadets learn to maintain accuracy, composure, and quick decision-making under pressure." Yekka's golden eyes locked onto the chaotic scene. Cadets darted between cover, their weapons discharging rapid bursts of light. The simulated enemy fire rained down on them, forcing the young humans to move with precision and speed. Despite the apparent chaos, there was a method to their madness. Every movement deliberate, every shot calculated. "This is reckless," Jorran said, his voice rising. "One misstep, and they could learn," Drayton interrupted sharply. "War isn't safe, Lieutenant. If they don't understand the stakes here, how can we expect them to survive out there?" Yekka folded her arms, her gaze unwavering. "In Kasari training, live fire exercises are reserved for elite forces. This seems excessive for recruits." Drayton tilted his head, his sharp eyes studying her. "Your elite forces may face battle once they've mastered safety. Ours face it from day one. Because war won't wait for mastery." As he spoke, a cadet stumbled over an obstacle, landing hard on his side. An instructor was on him instantly, shouting commands. The cadet scrambled to his feet, resumed his course, and fired a precise shot that struck a distant target. The instructor barked approval, and the cadet moved forward, determination etched into his features. "They thrive on failure," Yekka murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. Lieutenant Jorran's antennae twitched violently. "You simulate pain?" Drayton nodded. "Pain is a teacher. Fear is an obstacle. We strip away the cadets' illusions of safety and force them to confront what they are capable of, what they are willing to endure." Yekka stepped closer to one of the pods, watching as the faint tremors of the cadet's body betrayed the intensity of what they were experiencing. A nearby monitor displayed the simulation, a battlefield engulfed in flames, allies falling, enemies closing in from every direction. The cadet barked orders, their voice steady despite the chaos. The simulation didn't relent, throwing obstacle after obstacle at them. "And if they cannot endure?" Yekka asked quietly. "They can," Drayton said, his tone absolute. "Because failure isn't the end here. It's the beginning of resilience. They push past it. They find a way." The simulation ended with a sharp chime. The pod opened, and the cadet emerged, their uniform soaked with sweat, their breathing ragged. Yet there was something in their eyes, a fierce determination that Yekka couldn't ignore. Drayton placed a hand on the cadet's shoulder. "Good work. Rest up, you'll be back at it tomorrow." The cadet saluted and walked away, their steps steady despite the obvious exhaustion. Yekka turned to Drayton. "You do this to all of them?" "Every last one," Drayton replied. "Because out there the stakes are real, we can't afford hesitation. By the time they leave this facility, they've already faced their worst fears and conquered them." Jorran whispered under his breath. "This is madness." "Madness," Yekka echoed, though she didn't entirely believe her own words. She looked back at the rows of pods, at the cadets emerging one by one, battered but unbroken. The weight of what she had witnessed settled heavily on her shoulders. Drayton turned to face her, his eyes sharp. "You came here to understand what makes us different, Commander. Now you know. We don't train to avoid chaos. We train to master it. Because in the end, the galaxy doesn't remember the strongest or the smartest. It remembers those who refuse to fall." Yekka's gaze lingered on the cadets, then shifted to Jorran, who looked utterly defeated. She felt the same, though she dared not show it. "Major," she said, her voice low, "you've shown us much today, and I suspect I will need a long time to comprehend it." Drayton smiled faintly. "Take all the time you need, Commander. But remember this, when the enemy comes, it won't be our technology or our strategies that decide the outcome. It'll be the grit, the fire, and the unyielding will of our people." As they left the facility and returned to their shuttle, the rain began to fall again, cold and unrelenting. Yekka glanced back at the training grounds one last time, the echo of cadets' voices, carrying on the wind. For the first time in her career, she felt something she had never expected: dread. The Kasari military was precise, efficient, and technologically advanced. But against this raw, unrelenting force of nature, Yekka couldn't shake the feeling that they were unprepared. The shuttle doors closed with a hiss, and as the craft ascended into the stormy Terran skies, Yekka's thoughts lingered on a single chilling question. If this was their training, what were humans truly capable of on the battlefield? In the foreground, a tall, crimson-scaled alien with golden, slitted eyes stands resolute, their ceremonial cloaks soaked and clinging to their angular frame. Their expression is a mix of awe and unease as they gaze ahead. The background features a chaotic human military training ground under a stormy sky, with torrential rain and flashes of lightning illuminating the scene. Muddy human cadets crawl under barbed wire, climb towering wooden walls, and leap through fiery obstacles, their determination palpable. To the side, a glowing blue neural pod from an underground facility emits eerie light, hinting at advanced mental conditioning. Above, a sleek shuttle ascends into the storm, leaving trails of mist against a turbulent sky. The scene is layered with raw grit and a foreboding atmosphere of relentless human resilience, blending chaos with precision.